Well, greetings, my beloved clients and friends. It's been a while, but I wanted to do this video. Just stay in touch, let you know I've been thinking about you. We're still here, alive, working hard. So I wanted to go over Tesla's quarterly earnings call, which was on Wednesday, and it was pretty insightful. Just wanted to share with you some thoughts, my reaction and opinions about that. Because Tesla's one of our large holdings in our portfolio. It's been for probably 5-6 years. And so just a little background about Tesla, because I think it was like he was kind of announcing a new chapter in the story that is Tesla. And so they started out probably 15 years ago, and Elon's stated goal or his vision was to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. So the world is largely dependent on fossil fuels, and a big consumer of fossil fuels is our transportation, cars and trucks and all those modes of transportation, and we're dependent on fossil fuels. And he says, know what? There's a finite amount of that, and we better think about it, and also how it impacts the environment, that we should think about transitioning sooner rather than later. And so his plan was, I'm going to make an electric vehicle. And people might say, well, where does electricity come from? Just to a certain degree, it can come from fossil fuels, right? Those power plants are run by coal and natural gas, but also can be run with things like nuclear and solar and fusion and fission and other forms of energy creation that would be an alternative. And he knew that when he said electric cars, people thought golf cart, and golf cart is not sexy, and it's not something that people aspire to be their main form of transportation, And so he goes, in his mind, I'm going to make the electric vehicle sexy. As a matter of fact, the 4 vehicles that he made was the Model S, the Model X, the Model Y, and he wanted to make a Model E, but Ford had already taken that name, so he called it the Model 3. Like an E backwards, and so that it would spell out sexy. And his strategy was, first of all, we're going to figure out how to make a car. We're going to make a real high-end luxury, not luxury, sporty, sexy electric vehicle, which was the Roadster. And he said, it's going to be low output, meaning we're only going to make a few of them, and it's going to be very expensive. But we don't really have the capacity to make a high output, like a lot of vehicles. So we're going to make that first one, get the buzz, get people excited, and really see the potential of an electric vehicle. And with the money and the experience and the knowledge and the tooling and everything that we gather from that first go, phase 2, we're going to come out with like a luxury, a little bit more mass market vehicle. So we're going to sell more of them. The price is going to be lower, but it's still going to be high end. And that was the Model S, which came out, around $100,000. So it's not going to be in everybody's garage, obviously. But they were selling, 10, 20,000 of these. So it's a lot more output. And with the money and the expertise, because now they got to learn how to do, mass production to build at scale. They need to have a factory and an assembly line and stuff like that. And so with the money and the expertise and the capital through that exercise, then we're going to come out with a more mass market, kind of sub $50,000 vehicle. And that was the Model 3. And I'll tell you, when that Model 3 came out, like in 17 or 18, They were on the cusp. I'm talking about days of bankruptcy and shutting down. They were losing money. They were bleeding cash, and Elon was sleeping at the factory. But they pulled it off, and they delivered the Model 3, and it was a success. But it was not without its problems, and it kind of lacked polish, and there was huge positive reaction to it, but there was also a lot of criticism about it. And then they fine-tuned that, and they came up with the Model Y, which was like their huge success. And so that was their plan. Phase 1, that Roadster. Phase 2, that Model S, kind of luxury vehicle. Phase 3, that more mass market type of vehicle. And with each one building on the success and the capital and the knowledge and the experience of the previous step. So, and they were growing like crazy, 50% a year. They were growing it, and he foresaw that maybe for the next decade we're going to grow at 50% a year. And they only had their factory in Fremont, California. They had one in Shanghai that was like half built, and they were like, there was a huge demand for their cars. There was a waiting list, and he foresaw that, man, we could maybe sell 10 million cars a year because the demand is so high, and we're supply constrained. That's the problem. We'd sell more vehicles if we could, but we can't make more. And so he built 2 new factories in Austin, Texas, and Brandenburg, Germany, and now he had 4 gigafactories. And when he built his other, what he called gigafactories, he would do them in phases. But when he did the ones in Brandenburg and Austin, now he had money, so he fully built them out. And they're these massive things. And so now he finally had capacity to meet demand, but he realized that he had capacity to meet demand. He got to a point where with those 4 gigafactories, he could probably make 3 million vehicles a year. At least, once he got them fully operating and everything. But guess what? Once he was able to make enough vehicles, he found out that there was a limit to how many of his cars people would buy. And he was, like I said, he was growing at 50% a year, and he hit like 1 million one year, and then just under 1.5 million. And the next year, which was 2023, we were on track to probably do 2 million. And they didn't hit it. They didn't do 2 million in 23. They came just under it, like 1.8, and they again didn't do 2 million in 2024. And on 25, they're not going to do 2 million this year either. And so they like leveled off, and that's where they're kind of stuck at. They really only have 2 vehicles, the Model 3 and the Y. Over 95% of their sales are just those 2 vehicles, and a little bit for everything else, the Model S, the Model X, the Cybertruck. And so as a car company, they've really found, I think, kind of their equilibrium, their level, about a 2 million vehicle a year company. Some people thought, he's going to keep compounding like this and eventually be doing 20 million cars a year, or 10, or 7, right? Even the pessimists were like, man, he probably at full capacity he's going to sell 6 million a year, which is a far cry from where he's at. And unless he comes out with a much more economical vehicle, I don't think he's going to do it. Just to give you some perspective, the largest automaker in the world is Toyota. And Toyota does about 9 million vehicles a year. And if you compare and think about Toyota compared to Tesla, Toyota has global distribution in every continent of the world. And you could buy a Toyota anywhere, and it's an established brand. It has a great reputation for quality and dependability and value. And you could buy a Toyota in any form. You could buy a truck, an SUV, a van, a minivan, a station wagon, a crossover, a luxury car like a Lexus, a sports car, and then on the low end you could buy a sub $20,000 Toyota, you know, that's really nice and good and dependable, and you could service it anywhere in the world. You get parts for it any place in the world, and you could fuel it any place in the world. And they have gas and hybrid, and they're just, I mean, they're just an all-around great company. So how's Tesla with really two vehicles and not the same distribution network or service network or parts network? How are they going to even come close to that? Right? They're not. An example of a $2 million auto company, $2 million in vehicle, no, 2 million vehicles per year sold is like BMW. BMW is more comparable to Tesla. And they also have a global distribution and a great reputation and a brand. And it's an aspirational brand. And they don't really sell on the low end like Tesla. They're kind of mid and upper market. And they only do 2 million vehicles a year. So that's about where Tesla is. So as a car company, I don't see like this huge, 50% growth coming out of Tesla as a car company, okay? But if you think about what he set out to do, I think he accomplished his goal, which was to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And he did. He made electric vehicles a thing, to the point where every other automaker is now making one where they could be charged. There's still some work to be doing on the charging network globally, but it's growing. It's the ability to charge an electric vehicle is a thing, and in any big city you could do it, and in many parts of the world. I was just in Tijuana, and there was a BYD, which is the Chinese electric vehicle dealership there, and yeah. So I think you could check that box that he made electric vehicles. There's countries that have mandates that, by 2030 or by 2035 it's got to be 100% electric vehicles. And I know in Vietnam they just passed this thing that all the scooters by a certain, like within 5 years, got to all be electric, and everybody has a scooter over there. So I mean, you could attribute a lot of that to Elon Musk and his vision, and he said, I am going to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And I think he did it. He made that shift in the world, that now people are thinking that way globally, and countries are thinking that way, and corporations are thinking that way. So why the urgency to, like, say, come out with a Model 2 this economy and compete with everybody else in that market? And I think about his strategy. Phase 1, the Roadster, with the capital and the money and the expertise. Phase 2, a luxury vehicle, and phase 3, the mass market vehicle. And so now they have that, and guess what? That mass market vehicle, the Model 3 and the Y, generates $4 billion a quarter in free cash flow. Pause. That's a lot of money. And that Model 3 and the Y built them 4 gigafactories around the world that have $3 million vehicle capacity, and they only could sell 2 million. So there's unused capacity in these massive gigafactories that he called the machine that makes the machine. And he invested a lot of money into those gigafactories to do like highly automated mass production. They could just churn them out. The problem is, they can't sell in them. So he has capacity. So what's he gonna do with those factories, with that $4 billion in free cash flow, with the knowledge that he's acquired about manufacturing at scale, right? He's talked a lot about the learning curve and how he's learned so much about manufacturing and how to manufacture. And he said, you know what? There's a lot of improvements that could be done in the realm of manufacturing. He goes, and we've made a lot of those improvements, and we're working on them. We're trying to make that more efficient, and how to maximize the output from a factory. And so he has those assets those factories, the knowledge, the brain power, people that come out of schools with a lot of potential and a lot of opportunities. They've interviewed them. What's the two companies you want to work at? And they say SpaceX and Tesla are like 1 and 2. So those are also assets. And then everything they've learned from gathering all the data from these electric vehicles, they're miles on the road, and they have a lot. And how are they going to deploy that? What's the phase 4? And he kind of announced it at this quarterly call. He said, our goal was sustainable energy, the world's transition to sustainable. But he goes, now I think our goal should be sustainable abundance. He changed the word. Accelerate the world's transition to sustainable abundance. And what he meant by that was the dawn of an age with autonomous vehicles and robots. Those were the two things that he's working on, that he's been working on, and that he already has. He's already almost there on these things. He just talked about we're at the third iteration of our Optimus robot. We're using them in our factory, and one thing he said that was interesting. He said, imagine you have a robot, and he had said before that the cost of the robot is going to be less than the cost of the car, because basically that autonomous vehicle is a robot with wheels, and another robot in a humanoid form, it's just a robot with legs. But the brain is the brain. The brain is the thing that was hard, that they're working on. And he's been saying, he's been a year out on coming out with an autonomous vehicle for like 6 years. I think in 2018, he says, I think we're about a year away for this full self-driving vehicle. He said it again at 19 and 20, and every year he says, I think we're about a year away. We're like 99% there. But he's talking about that 0.9 and that 0.99 and that 0.99. It's like a lot harder than he had anticipated. And he might not even be in the lead on this autonomous vehicle thing. There's, I think, Waymo's maybe ahead of them so far, but they have a lot of data, and they're getting very, very close. So, but he said, imagine this robot that you have that could perform surgery on you. So that same robot that, takes out the trash and makes your breakfast and takes the kids to school and picks up the dog poos and could also, do surgery on you. And he said some really interesting things about the robot. He said, man, that hand is a lot harder than we thought. And he goes, he's really like, you could tell as he was talking about that, he's really developed appreciation for God's creation and how God made it so perfect. He goes, now I see how come it's, four fingers and an opposing thumb, and why the fingers are different length, and why they put the muscles in the forearm. And he said, we had tried to put all the mechanisms for the hand in the hand, and we were having trouble. And then we realized, why don't we do it the way God do it, where you put all the muscles and stuff and tendons in the forearm? And he goes, but it's hard. It's hard to get it just right. But he's working on it, And just like it was hard to land a rocket when it came back, but he did it. And they got the factory, and they got the brain power, and they got the capital to do it. Like I said, the $4 billion a quarter in free cash flow. So my point of this video is to say, don't think of Tesla as a car company, because if you look at it as a car company, it's just ridiculously overvalued. But think about it kind of like, let's say GE, General Electric. If you were to think of Tesla as a car company, would be like thinking of General Electric as a light bulb company. And sure, they make light bulbs, but they make so many other things. And for 50, 60 years, from probably before World War II to the year 2010, General Electric was a great investment. It was this compounding company, and their slogan was GE, we bring good things to life. And there were, scientists in lab coats working at GE, and they were asking the question, how can we electrify the world? And would it be possible to electrify the task of ironing clothes? And would it be possible to electrify the toasting of bread? And would it be possible to electrify the illuminating of a room? And would it be possible to electrify the opening of a garage door? And could you electrify the washing of clothes and the storage of perishable food? And the answer to all those questions was yes. And GE made all those things, TVs and refrigerators and appliances and electronics, and they made all those things, and they changed the world, and they changed the way we live, and they changed the way we do things, and they kept iterating on that over and over for decades, and it was just a hugely profitable, growing company, right? And so Elon Musk, he has these big thoughts, like, how do we get the world off of fossil fuels? And then how do we solve the labor problem? Because, people are living longer, the population is getting older, but, they spend two or three decades out of productivity. And how are we going to take care of this aging population? And on the other end, the birth rates in these industrialized countries are declining. And if we close off our walls to immigrants, like, who's going to do the work? We have a lot of these, who's going to take care of all these old people? And, we have a population problem and a labor problem. Well, guess what? Robots solve that problem. And so you think about the possibilities, and the other thing about Tesla, so think about it that as a company that solves the world's problems, and that the other thing is that's applied artificial intelligence is what a autonomous vehicle is how do we take this artificial intelligence and put it into the world of atoms? Because right now there's this big AI push and crazy developments that AI can accomplish in the world of bytes. Because think about two worlds, the world of bytes and the world of atoms. And AI could do anything you want in the world of bytes. Like, you ask it a question, it could give you an answer. It'll beat you at chess. It'll make a video for you. It'll do your homework, right? It could plan your vacation and book your hotel and the restaurant and all your entertainment, right? And it's your virtual assistant in this virtual world of bytes. But what it can't do is scratch your back. That's the world of atoms, right? And we live in these two worlds. If you think about going to a restaurant, you would say that's in the world of atoms, sitting down and eating a meal. But what had to happen before you did that? You had to decide which restaurant to go to. And you could do that in the world of bytes. And then you had to make reservations for that place. You could do that in the world of bytes, and you get directions to it, right? And all review and compare other different ones to decide which one you want, and what you feel like having. Look at the menu, decide what you're going to order. You could do all that in the world of bytes, but then you got to go into the world of atoms and get there, sit down and eat it, enjoy the meal. But then guess what afterwards? You pay for it in the world of bytes. You take a picture of it in the world of bytes. You post a video about it in the world of bytes. You write a review about it in the world of bytes, and other people know about it in the world of bytes, right? So we're really integrated between this world of atoms and the world of bytes. And Elon is bringing, everybody else is working on AI in the world of bytes, and doing consulting and taking people's jobs that work on computers and all these things that happen in the virtual world that are very valuable. And these companies are very valuable, and they're they're going to do really good. But he's saying, okay, now how can we take that AI and bring it into the world of atoms so that, I don't just ask my AI a question and answers it. I could tell it to do something and it'll do it. It'll actually scratch my back and tie my shoe and open the door and take my kid to school and make my dinner. Not just help me decide what to have for dinner, but could actually make it and perform surgery on me, So he's bringing AI to the world of atoms. So I think about the possibilities, and he says, man, these two things, autonomous vehicles and a robot, are bigger than the electric vehicle market. They're going to be huger, and Tesla became a $1 trillion company with that one thing, the electric vehicle, the $2 million a year 2 million vehicles per year electric vehicle company. Imagine what it's going to be when they're making 10 million robots a year. Because who's not going to want one of those in their house to help them, not only in their house, at their business, in their factory, anywhere. There's going to be a global demand for millions of those, and he's probably in the lead there. And he has the resources and the capital and the knowledge and the gigafactories to stay in the lead. He's way ahead of everybody, and he has this huge advantage, and the data set that he's acquired. So that encourages me about Tesla as a company, that I think they're going to be very close to those two big things. And the question is, phase 4, right? Use the money from the Model 3 and the Model Y to make autonomous vehicles and a humanoid robot. What's phase 5? What's he going to do with the money and the expertise and the capital from making autonomous vehicles and humanoid robots? What's phase 5? Because there's going to be one. So that's what's exciting, that this might be. And that's why I think he should get that pay package that needs to be voted on. And this is really also a note to shareholders that you're going to get the opportunity to vote in favor of giving Elon this huge pay package, and I think we should do it. And it's dependent on him hitting certain metrics, and the metrics are not only revenue and profits, but they're also develop this robot, take it to market, get this amount of sales in robots and stuff like that. There's like 10 or 12 different metrics that he hits, that along the way he gets compensated as he hits each one. And they're tied to those two things. So, and he says, if I get booted out when I'm almost there, that's too big of a risk for me to take. So he's kind of pitching for himself to get this compensation package, but I think he should do it, because 6 years ago they had this compensation package for him as well that was crazy, like moonshot goals. If you do this, we'll pay you this much. Within like a year and a half, he hit them all. And he became the richest man in the world. But, so did Tesla shareholders, and so did, the world did transition to sustainable. So was it worth it? I think absolutely. Should he get it? The next one too? I think he should. And there's these two big companies that advise institutional investors, and they're advising against it. And he mentioned that in the call too. And so, I'm advising to vote for it, because exactly what we talked about. I think we should align his goals with the goals of the company, man. And if he wins, we win big. So I hope he hits those goals. I hope he gets all that money, because when he does, I'll get a chunk of that too, and so will you if you're a Tesla shareholder. So yeah, I just want you to think about Tesla in that way. I encourage you, when you get that proxy, to vote it this time and vote in favor of that. And also as a way of thinking about this AI revolution, that it has legs, and we're in the early first innings of it. Like, imagine the world prior to everything that you now don't even think twice about plugging in. And it's not just in your home. I mean, GE, they asked the question, how can we, they went into the dentist's office and say, how can we, electrify the drilling of teeth? And they went into every other industry and say, how can we electrify the things they do there? The sawing of wood and the drilling of a screw and the drilling of a hole and all these things that can be done with electricity. And GE just brought good things to life for decades, and there was a tremendous investment for decades. And I think the AI boom is going to make not just Tesla, but those companies that participate in this changing the way we live in the world of bytes and the world of atoms with AI. Those companies are going to be good investments for a long time, and that's how we think about investing. There's stuff that happens on a day-to-day basis, tariff talks and trade wars and interest rates and inflation and all that stuff. But man, there's a bigger picture that if we see that it could work in our favor. All right, so just some thoughts. I hope you guys have a great day.